Welcome to the Bison Postgame Show, where North Dakota State is moving on after a big win over the Mercer Bears, 31-7, the final score. With the Forum's Mike McFeely and Jeff Kolpack, I'm Sam Goetzinger. What do you think about this one, Jeff? It started off very strong. Second half, a little stagnant, but overall a good win.
Well, Bryce Lance set the tone and actually probably won the game in the first 5 minutes with those two touchdown receptions. The first one was just a thing of NFL-like material.
Yeah.
You know, it's contested in the corner of the end zone. He went up, grabbed it, great hands, had the composure to get his feet down. I mean, that's a big play, 7-0 right off the bat.
Did you notice a difference between this game and the one against Abilene Christian?
Well, in the start, yes, but it kind of seemed like the middle of the game for North Dakota State just became a slog offensively. And maybe I'm just sour because North Dakota State isn't going to get in the Mountain West, it looks like, so I'm just in a bad mood all the time. But it just felt like a weird game. Maybe we always undersell the opponents that come in here, because back in the good old days, NDSU would beat a team like this 55-7. But today it was 31-7. The game was never really in doubt, but it just never felt like NDSU got in a rhythm. And I think Tim Polasek even said it was just an awkward game, because I think everybody expects us to just keep on scoring and scoring and scoring, and that just didn't happen. And so it felt like, where's the offense? They can't run the ball. Cam Miller's getting sacked. He threw 2 interceptions. The standards are really high in Fargo.
Yeah.
Really high and unfair, but that's the standards, they say, and it didn't feel like they ever got rolling today.
Well, that team had some guys, though. I mean, defensively, they had some guys, like some all-time program guys. I know they're only 10 years old, but as far as resurrecting football, but I mean, Miles Redding, 2 picks. That guy has some ball skills. That's 8 picks on the year. That just doesn't happen by accident. I mean, that guy's going to get an NFL shot. There's no doubt.
It really is a luxury to say that the offense wasn't going, even though they put up 31 points.
Yeah, and 400 total yards.
Yes.
Yeah. But it just, again, I'm just sour because they're not getting in the Mountain West. So let's move on.
Well, defensively, the NDSU looked really good. That's something you don't want to move on from. Want to bring that into next week, don't you?
Oh, yeah, and they're going to need it. And maybe that's where my mind is that, you know, we've watched the Jacks this whole season. We've watched them the last 2 weeks. And you see what happened in Brookings today, and you go, whoa, they are rolling right now. The Jackrabbits are hot. And they're coming here next week, and North Dakota State can't rush the ball for 80 yards by the middle of the fourth quarter and hope to win that game. Cam Miller can't throw 2 interceptions next week and hope to win that game. But so maybe I'm looking ahead, just like the Bison players were accused of by the head coach, earlier this week. But they're gonna. I just feel like the Bison are gonna have to play almost a perfect game next week, like they did defensively last time they played South Dakota State to have a chance next Saturday.
Would you agree with that? I feel like the Jacks are a much different team than the last time we saw them here in the Dome.
Oh, no question. And I think NDSU's offensive line maybe was a little questionable today with the injury to Jake Rock. They jangled a little bit with Hunter Pontius, and then moved Griffin Empey on the other side. Don't know if that worked out as well. And Tim Polasek said after the game that they'll evaluate it, and maybe they'll change. I don't know. Maybe you put Bo Johnson in and move Mason Miller inside. If that's one adjustment, that's something that the coaching staff will figure out in the next 24 to 36 hours. But there wasn't a whole lot of room there today. And most teams haven't run the ball well against Mercer all year. I get that. But this is also, the FCS semifinal team. You got to run better than that.
Absolutely. But a big one today, again, 31-7, the final score against Mercer. Big one next week in the semifinal round, South Dakota State coming into town. You guys have any final thoughts on the game here today, moving into next week?
Well, the 4 final teams are the ones that we thought were going to be the 4 final teams pretty much from the middle of the year on. South Dakota, Montana State, South Dakota State, and North Dakota State. So it's the 4 heavy hitters in FCS, and NDSU is a part of it, which should be celebrated. It's so weird to be in Fargo, because this is the 13th time in 14 years that the Bison have been in the semifinals, and everybody's going like, well, yeah, they're in the semifinals. Big whoop. It's just it's hard to fight, but it is going to be, as Tim Polasek said, a war next Saturday in this Dome. I'm suspecting that the Jacks are going to be favored by at least a couple of points, just because they are playing so well. But it's going to be a ball game, and if you don't sell out the game next week, if this place doesn't have 18,700 people in it going absolutely bonkers next Saturday at 11 o'clock, then I don't know how you're ever going to sell out the Dome again.
I totally agree. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, yeah, the same. And you talk about the FCS. This is the FCS, and we've known that for a while now with all the defections. And Mercer is probably the next best, and they're still a ways away. I mean, and they're losing a ton of guys. I mean, they had a lot of seniors out there, especially on defense. They actually have to retool after this year. I just don't see anybody in the CAA, the Southern, the Big South. I just don't see them ever making a big playoff dent. I just don't see it.
No, I think the Southern Conference teams are like the ones we've seen, that they have a year or a class of players that kind of bubble up to the top. And Mercer was fantastic this year, and they had a bunch of experienced guys, and had a couple of guys in the press conference who set career records for tackles and interceptions. And that's just kind of what we've seen in the Southern Conference, whether it's East Tennessee State, whether it's Samford, whether it's Furman, whether it's now Mercer. I just don't think they can sustain like the Dakota schools can.
Yeah, it's 31-7. It wasn't 10-7.
Right.
I mean,
But and their head coach said it, and I fight this all the time. Their head coach said, I hope you people don't take this for granted, what you're seeing. And every coach that comes in here says that, and it seems like we do. At least I do, and clearly, 9,000 fans who didn't show up today take it for granted too.
Well, we'll see if there's some butts in the seats next week. Jacks are in town next week. Battle of some Missouri Valley Conference rivals in the semifinal round of the playoffs. For Mike McFeely and Jeff Kolpack, I'm Sam Goetzinger. We'll see you next week after the semifinal game.